So we actually are going to read Kant. I changed my mind. I said in an earlier talk that we would be avoiding Kant. But this week we will be looking at some excerpts from Kant's great magisterial, intimidating work, The Critique of Pure Reason, which you can either read or use as a weapon against your friends because it's so heavy. Kant has a reputation for being very difficult, and it can be very difficult read, but as I hope you've seen from looking through these texts, in a way all great philosophers are difficult, and in a way they're all simple and easy, because as it turns out, we're talking about things that are actually quite familiar to us. Last week, in looking at Hume, I think we learned something and deepened our knowledge of what metaphysics is. And the interesting thing about that is that sometimes you can learn about things by reading people who are advocates of them, and sometimes you can learn about things by reading people who are critics of them. And what I mean is that we learned about metaphysics by Hume's criticism of metaphysics. And I think one of the things that we learned is that there's a metaphysics of everyday life. That is, that metaphysics is not just about these grand questions of God, freedom, and immortality of the soul, and things like that. That there is a metaphysics of everyday life, and what I'm thinking of is Hume's analysis and really dismissal of the metaphysical concept of causality. And here we see that metaphysics really is, or the use of metaphysical concepts, or in a way doing metaphysics, or making metaphysical assumptions, is a part of everyday life. The concept of cause, one thing causing another, is a mundane, everyday concept that we use to understand the world. But it is also a metaphysical concept. That is, no one's ever seen a cause. No one could actually prove that one thing causes another, Hume says. All we really know is that one thing in our experience regularly follows another, and that the prior thing caused the posterior thing is something that we supply. Now, while Hume thought that that meant that there was absolutely no evidence for something like causality, and that it was an unfounded metaphysical assumption, other philosophers may have other ideas about that. But what he does show is that there is a metaphysics of everyday life, and here we get to modern take on what is a metaphysical proposition and what is an empirical proposition. You might say that metaphysical propositions are those propositions that we couldn't possibly ever produce any evidence for, while an empirical proposition is one that is actually based upon our own experience and our shared experience of the world. There's an old joke that the 20th century philosophers Bertrand Russell and his student Ludwig Wittgenstein, were sitting in Russell's rooms, and they were arguing, and that Russell began to be really, really irritated at Wittgenstein. He said, "Wittgenstein, will you please admit that there is no purple elephant in this room?" And Wittgenstein said, "No, I don't do metaphysics." That's what passes for a philosophy joke, but maybe it's not that funny, but it actually shows you something. What did Wittgenstein mean? Well, I will make assertions about what I experience and what appears to me. And certainly, there's no purple elephant that appears to me. But to say that there is or isn't a purple elephant in this room is to assert something about being and about the way the world is apart from my experience of it. And that is to do metaphysics. That is to assert the way the world is apart from my experience of it is metaphysics. And he said, I don't do that. So I know that there's no purple elephant in my consciousness or appearing to me, but to make such a wild assertion that it doesn't exist. So we'll see that when we read Kant that he is both a critic, like Hume, of metaphysics, and that he also wants to save metaphysics. Now, it would be too involved, it would be too difficult to go into Kant's metaphysics, but what I would like to do is to look a little bit about what he thinks the limitations are of human reason in actually approaching metaphysical questions.